Afternoon. Right. I want to do one of the hardest things to do in boxing, I think, which is a pound for pound top 10. Why is it the hardest thing to do? Because obviously most of the guys on your list are never going to have the chance to fight each other. Now, I think everyone does their own list in their own way because everyone obviously likes different things, different styles, and everyone looks for different things, just like when you're judging a fight and people have different scorecards. So it's your own opinion. With mine, when I do mine, I always, for one, I have a rule that I don't have a fighter that hasn't fought for 12 months, or when it gets to that 12 months, has no fight signed, ready to go. So if they're still on the list after that 12-month period, I take them off my list. And I try and judge my top 10 on past achievement, current form, level of opponent they're beating, even if it's all right saying someone's winning world titles, but are they actually beating high caliber opponents in the process, or are they getting fights that are well and truly in their favour? And I suppose just in general, popularity as well plays a part in pound for pound, and hard hitting as well obviously is always most important. Knockout ratio I always take into consideration as well. With that being said, what I will do is I'll just read off some names that haven't made my list at this moment in time. Not because they're necessarily bad fighters, but I just don't see them meriting a place on my list ahead of the fighters that I already have on there. So the fighters that don't make my list are Danny Garcia. He's got some great wins on his record. He's a fighter that you have to take into consideration. Of course, he's beat obviously Eric Morales, Amir Khan, Sab Judah, Lucas Matisse. He's fighting Lamont Peterson soon in a non-title fight. So he's definitely a fighter that is still young enough to obviously rise his stock in the game. And some people would already have him on their pound for pound top 10, but just not for me at this moment in time. Another one is Guillermo Rigondeaux. A lot of people, for some reason, have Rigondeaux very, very high on their pound for pound list. I can see why, but for me, he's only really beaten one massive name in the sport, which was obviously Benito Donaire, and even then he got knocked down by Donaire in the 10th round. He's also been down in his most recent fight, and he's not been exactly looking convinced. In fact, he went down twice in his most recent fight in the same round, and he's not been looking the most convincing in his victories as of late, even though a lot of people consider him to be the dominant force at Super Bantam. I would say let's get him in there with Carl Frampton or Leo Santa Cruz and see what happens. I'm not saying I don't rate him, but I'm saying I think he needs another test before I put him on my pound for pound list. Another one I've put on there, a bit of a disputable one. This one, a lot of people would probably say he should be on there. Canelo Alvarez. The only reason I don't put him on there is right now I think I've got 10 guys in front of him that warrant a position on that pound for pound list more than Canelo Alvarez does at this point in time. If Alvarez had beaten Mayweather in that fight, of course, a year and a half ago, then Alvarez will probably be near the top of my list by now. But the fact he didn't beat Mayweather, didn't have the most convincing fights against Erislandy Lara. So, he's a great fighter. He's still got bags of potential and time in the sport. And, I'm sure he will rise in the rankings as time goes on. But as for now, he doesn't make my list. Adonis Stevenson, I don't really know why people put Adonis Stevenson on their list. Yes, when he won the WBC light heavyweight title against Chad Dawson, it was a fantastic win, a fantastic knockout. Everyone enjoyed the occasion, but at the end of the day, was it that much of a statement when Chad Dawson had just come back from a defeat against Andre Ward? Excuse me, and just in general, wasn't exactly maybe in the best place to take that fight. Having rumours flying around that he'd gone down in sparring as well, so maybe that win was a little bit overhyped, although you still had to give Adonis Stevenson all the credit in the world. Then, of course, he went on to beat Tavoris Cloud, former champion, got beat by Bernard Hopkins. Again, it was another convincing stoppage win. Another win over Tony Bellew. A lot of people kind of went into that fight assuming Bellew wouldn't win the fight. I was one of them. I didn't believe Bellew deserved any chance at light heavyweight any longer. I thought he'd outgrown the weight quite a long time ago, which showed in the Isaac Chilemba fights, as well as other fights previously in his light heavyweight career. And I wasn't surprised at all to see Adonis Stevenson stop Tony Bellew. I think Tony Bellew is a lot better at cruiserweight where he is now. Another man that hasn't made my list is Andre Ward. It's a crying shame that Andre Ward doesn't make my list, because I do love to hate him, but I hate to love him too. You know, I do think he's a fantastic fighter, and I do like watching Andre Ward fight. I just don't like his diva antics or his arrogance, and you know, the bullshit of the last couple of years as well. Has kind of put a lot of people off Andre Ward. But saying that, doesn't matter anyway. The only reason Andre Ward isn't on there, not because of talent, because he would be if he was fighting. He hasn't fought since he fought Edwin Rodriguez in late 2013. He's still not got a fight lined up, although he has just been, of course, mandated to fight Carl Froch. And we'll see what happens there. But as for now, no, nearly a year and a half of inactivity, no fight scheduled, no place on my list. Another fighter that you could put on my list, maybe a bit of an outsider in some people's opinions, is Juan Francisco Estrada. Obviously working wonders down at flyweight at the minute. He's been on a really decent run, beating a lot of talented fighters. A lot of people have him as a rising stock in the game, although he has got a couple of defeats on his record, and one of the fighters he has lost to is on my pound for pound top 10. So we'll see where his career goes, but at the minute he doesn't warrant a position on my top 10. The last one that I could really think of that I might have put on the top 10 that is talented enough to be there, but it doesn't warrant a place in my opinion at this time, is Terence Crawford. Terence Crawford, of course, had a fantastic 2014, winning the world title, defending it a couple of times in style against good caliber opposition. And a lot is predicted of Terence Crawford going forward. I would personally like to see him unify the belts and then step up in weight. I do think he's a talented fighter. I do enjoy watching him fight as well. So I'll be interested to see where his career goes. And I'm sure over the next few years he'll rise through the pound for pound rankings naturally anyway, not just on my list, but on whatever unofficial list you want to look at. So that leaves me with my top 10 pound for pound. Now, of course, this is all opinion. You know, a lot of people might disagree with what I'm saying about my pound for pound top 10. A lot of people might agree with what I'm saying. You know, it's like I say, it's all what you like in fights and all what you like in boxing, and it's all how you judge your own top 10 pound for pound. So I'll start with 10 and go up. Number 10, Miguel Cotto. Last two fights, you know, he's won them both. Looked fantastic against Sergio Martinez, although the question begs to be asked, was Sergio Martinez exactly 100% going into that fight? But despite that, you know, he won the fight. He won it in style, knocking Sergio Martinez down several times before the stoppage. And, you know, became, obviously he's like a 5-weight world champion, I think it is now. So adding the middleweight crown to his list of achievements. And just going backwards in time, just through his achievements, the amount of talented fighters he stepped into the ring with. Although he's obviously stepped up short on a few occasions against top-level opposition that are higher than him in the rankings, you've got to give him all the credit in the world and all the dues in the world for what he's done and he's achieved. And although at the minute it appears like he's ducking Gennady Golovkin, he's still looking to fight a decent level opposition. If he gets the Canelo fight, I think a lot of people would accept that as a decent level of opposition fight. So he does warrant a position on there near the bottom just because of his achievements, and he's, you know, multi-weight division champion, current world middleweight champion. You've got to give him his respect for that. Number 9 on my list is a man that is now really starting to be a rising star of the boxing game. A lot of people's opinions go up and up and up about this fighter every time they watch him fight. If you haven't figured out who I'm talking about by now, it is of course Gennady Golovkin, who comes in at number 9 on my list. Some people might say that's a little bit low for a fighter that's been knocking everyone out for fun at middleweight. Yeah, maybe it is a little bit low, but I would say look at the calibre of opposition. Before kind of the last year and a half, you know, at the start of that winning streak of his middleweight title career, if you like, there wasn't many great names on that list that he's fought, or many fighters that you would look at and say, oh, he's going to find it hard to get past him. So in recent real times where he's really stepped up the level of competition at middleweight, in my opinion, by stepping up against the likes of Daniel Geale, who I see as like a high B-level fighter, you know, can win a world title, has won a world title, but was never going to be anything amazing or light up the division. And obviously Gennady Golovkin dispatched of Geale very well and very quickly. And then his most recent fight up against a fighter who I believed he was and is the second best middleweight on the planet in Martin Murray. And Martin Murray obviously took him 11 rounds, although Gennady Golovkin just delivered what he could only describe as probably a beatdown, although Murray showed a lot of heart and a lot of grit. So Gennady Golovkin only number 9, just because he hasn't really had those big fights yet, those mega fights yet. You know, that's really propelled him into the public limelight and propelled him up the rankings a little bit. You know, he does need one of those fights now, kind of against an Andre Ward or a Carl Froch or Miguel Cotto even. You know, he needs one of those bigger name fights. He needs to step up. I don't think he necessarily needs to step up. That's probably the wrong thing to say. But, you know, if he wants bigger and better things, and that's one of the fights he needs to take and he needs to win to get onto those bigger and better things. So he comes in at number 9 on my list. Number 8 on my list is Sergey Kovalev. Most recent win, of course, that fantastic win over Bernard Hopkins, where, you know, he arguably could have stopped Bernard Hopkins, but gave him the respect that he deserved and let him see the 12. Although I'm sure Bernard Hopkins would always say that Sergey Kovalev would never have stopped him. I think he would. But another fantastic win for Kovalev. Obviously, we all need and all want the Adonis Stevenson Sergey Kovalev fight. It's a fight we've been wanting not quite a while, about a year and a half. But I do put Kovalev on my rankings and not Stevenson, because Kovalev has travelled for one. Of course, he went and came to my home country, or Wales in the United Kingdom, to beat Nathan Cleverly for the title in the first place. And he's beat whoever has been put in front of him since then, very convincingly via knockout. Or very convincing. And then, of course, his most recent fight beat Bernard Hopkins on points in a convincing display by Sergey Kovalev, who really proved he's not just a hard-hitting fighter, but he has got some really fantastic boxing skills as well. And I think he impressed a lot of people that night, although a lot of people would say they already knew he was capable of it. So Sergey Kovalev has to be on that list at the minute. Just because as well he's fighting John Pascal, the former light heavyweight champion, of course, next, with a view of that winner that fight fighting Adonis Stevenson. So I had to put him on there just because of the fights he's got lined up, just because, you know, how he won the title in the first place, and his most recent win over Bernard Hopkins, who, you know, is a legend of the sport and a man who a lot of people were still predicting to beat Kovalev. So, you know, you've got to give Sergey Kovalev all of the dues, and I think he warrants his place on my top 10, especially going forwards. At number 7, my fellow city man as well as fellow countryman, Carl Froch. I can't see anybody not giving Carl Froch a place on their pound for pound top 10, even if they put him down at 10. You know, love him or hate him, the man has fought, with the exception of Youssef Mack, he has fought back-to-back solid competition for the last 6 years, start dating back to John Pascal. You know, I mean, there's not many fighters in our sport in the minute that could possess a resume that's as impressive as Carl Froch has. There are a few, you know, Froch isn't the only one, but there's not many, and that's what boxing needs. That's what fight fans want. The fighters that are going to step up and fight anybody in their division and take on all comers, and that's what Carl Froch has done. I mean, I know recently people are giving him a little bit of stick saying he ducked James DeGale. Yeah, maybe he did, and I don't blame him, because I think James DeGale would beat Carl Froch right now, if I'm honest. James DeGale was a very talented fighter. I think Carl Froch would have beaten him a couple of years ago, but the James DeGale we're seeing now, I think would give Carl Froch hell on earth. But I don't think, I'd say ducking James DeGale is the wrong word, because people are saying, oh, well, you're doing what Joe Calzaghe did to you, that's hypocritical. No, when Joe Calzaghe obviously didn't fight Froch and decided to retire, Carl Froch was the only young gun that was chasing Calzaghe from our shores at that time. And this particular occasion, Carl Froch has had 2 in George Groves and James DeGale, and he's just fought George Groves twice. So I don't really say how you can say he's doing the same thing Calzaghe did if you're trying to accuse him of that, or how you can say he's ducking the young lions. I just think Carl Froch deserves the big fights now. You know, let's leave him alone. Let's let him have his 1 or 2 fights that he wants, although it looks like he's going to be forced to fight Andre Ward. I'm not sure that was on his plans at all. I would be personally more interested to see him fight Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. or Gennady Golovkin, 2 fights that have both been mentioned a lot recently, along with the Ward fight. Either way, those 3 names adding to Carl Froch's resume, whether he wins, draws or loses, will only add, you know, to his status of fighting anybody and taking on all comers. and you know he is going to be a certified future Hall of Famer like many of these guys on this list are. Number 6 is a man that some could argue should be a little bit lower down based on his last 2 performances in the ring, but I do put Tim Bradley at number 6. The reason he's there is because Tim Bradley has fought a lot of high-end competition. He has beat a lot of high-end fighters, of course, including Manny Pacquiao himself, although some people would call that decision win debatable, including myself. But you have to give him credit. He's been there to win the fight. He did obviously enough to impress the judges that he won that fight that night, if you can say that, if you remember back to the controversy. So I think he's a one that deserves to be there. I do think he got screwed in his last fight. I don't think that was a draw against Chavez at all. I think he got a bit screwed there. But he rightfully lost against Manny Pacquiao in his second to last fight. But he's a man that still deserves to be there. He's still a man that he's had a lot of tough fights. He's even fought in my hometown. Of course, he beat Junior Witter for his first world title in Nottingham back in the day. So, and I was actually there to witness that as well. So, you know, I've maybe got a little bit of a soft spot for Tim Bradley as well. Okay, moving on. My number 5 is a man that doesn't really get mentioned a lot in the boxing world. And that man is Roman Gonzalez. If you don't know who Roman Gonzalez is, he is currently 42-0 with 36 knockout victories. He's a 3-weight world champion, minimum weight, light flyweight and flyweight champion. He's as well beat his biggest win on his career is Estrada, but the guy's a 3-weight world champion. He is just literally taking on all comers and knocking most of them out in those weights. Probably looking to step up against soon, although a lot of people want to see him rematch Juan Francisco Estrada, which would be a good rematch because the first one was a good fight. So I think he deserves a place there, undefeated, great KO percentage in world title fights, and certainly, you know, he's a man that's not exactly past his prime either. He's still got fights left in the tank, and he can still go up in weight and win other world championships and become a 4-weight or 5-weight world champion even. So the man has got a rising stock. If you don't know who Roman Gonzalez is, get on your YouTube and type Roman Gonzalez and watch some of his fights. That's all I would say. Going up to number 4 now. On my number 4, I've still got Juan Manuel Marquez high up on my rankings. You know, the man is just a legend. He's the kind of man for me, when I watch Manuel Marquez fight, I don't want to see him lose, if that makes sense. Even though sometimes, like, I don't know, it's one of them. He's just one of them fighters for me. I hate to see him lose. I think that's the best way to put it. I don't like seeing him lose. You know, I've had a soft spot for Juan Manuel Marquez for years. I think he's a tough little bastard. I love the way he fights. And you know, the fact that he's still, was he 41 now, and he's still looking for the big world title fights. He's talking about taking on Kell Brook here in England for the IBF welter. You know, don't think he'd ever fight Manny Pacquiao again, to be honest. Don't think we'd want to see number 5. So, you know, you got to give Juan Manuel Marquez all the credit in the world. I think he warrants a place in that pound for pound top 10, and I think for me he belongs at number 4. That's just my opinion. And at number 3, Manny Pacquiao. We don't need to warrant Manny Pacquiao being there at number 3, although a lot of people may question why he's not number 2. You'll find out why he's not number 2 in a minute. But Manny Pacquiao, we know Manny Pacquiao. The big fight's coming up. Money May versus Manny Pacquiao coming up in May 2nd. So less said about that, the better. We just know why Manny Pacquiao's there. Number 2 for me is a man that has not lost in 11 years, although he has lost on his record. And he's a man that deserves all the credit in the world. He's beaten whoever has been put in front of him for the last 11 years, no matter, you know, how big their mouth, how big or small they are, how hard they hit, how good they think they are. He's took on all comers and he's beat them all. That man is Vladimir Klitschko. And it's always a bit harder at heavyweights as well, because let's be honest, if you're a heavyweight, there's no way up from heavyweight. You know, you can't be a multi-weight world champion when you're a heavyweight. So, you know, you can't really say a multi-weight world champion always deserves credit ahead of a heavyweight. A lot of people would say Vladimir Klitschko has not always fought fantastic competition, but he has fought whatever has been in front of him for the past 11 years. You know, you've got to give the man all of his dues, especially his recent fights. You know, everyone's always thinking, most recently, apart from like Lepai, that this fight's going to be Klitschko's toughest to date. You know, you look at Pulev, you look at Povetkin, you look at David Hay. You know, these three guys just in the last few years alone were meant to be the biggest three threats to Klitschko for a long time, and Klitschko's got through all three of them quite convincingly. So, you know, you have to give Klitschko all the credit in the world. You can say he might not have fought amazing competition and that competition's on the rise now towards the back end of his career, but that's just unfair. The guy, you know, last lost to Lamont Brewster back in 2004, hasn't lost since. And I think, you know, he did avenge that Lamont Brewster defeat. I'm sure he did. So you can't really discredit him at all. Number one on my list is the one and only Floyd Money Mayweather. Why is he number one? Because he is number one. He's undefeated. He's beaten multi-weight world champion. He's beaten all comers, and everyone. He really is a Marmite fighter, isn't he, Floyd? Everyone loves to hate him and hates to love him, and you know, people will pay money to see Floyd win, and people will pay money to see Floyd lose. You know, that's Floyd Money Mayweather, most popular fighter on the planet, whether it's bad or good popularity, that is. And you know, probably, I don't think we will ever see, not in my lifetime at least, another star like Floyd Mayweather. What I mean by that is, you know, Mayweather makes like, what, 70, 80 million for 2 fights a year. You know, the highest paid sports athlete on the planet. You know, and most of that is probably self-made as well. That's what you got to give Mayweather a lot of credit for. You know, if you look back at his pretty boy days, you know, would we have ever guessed Money Mayweather would become as big as he is now and as rich as he is now? You know, maybe, but not to that scale. And I don't think we'll ever see another Floyd Mayweather in our lifetime to that height of, you know, that height of being paid and that height of popularity and sponsorship and coverage worldwide. I don't think we'll ever see that again in our lifetime. That's just my opinion. We might do, of course. I'm sure we'll see plenty of mini-me's like Adrian Broner. You know, I'm sure we'll see plenty of those. Although that tonight, you know, saying that tonight, Adrian Broner, I'm looking forward to that fight. John Molina Jr. I do think John Molina Jr. may stick it on Broner tonight. You know, you got to be impressed with Molina Jr. Over his recent performances. I know he's obviously lost, but it doesn't matter to me. I'm not Broner's biggest fan. I'm still convinced he lost to Malanaji. He definitely lost to Maidana, and I think he may lose tonight. Anyway, that's my pound for pound top 10. If you don't agree with it, then please tell me why, or please tell me who you'd have on your list. What's your pound for pound top 10? So yeah, hit me up. Please let me know.